Hello everybody. Well, I hope you've been enjoying all of my prior videos as I start to pull this story together from Adam and Eve and helping everyone understand the heart, Eden, the two trees, all these varying aspects, Adam and Eve. But what we're gonna get to is the serpent. I know I mentioned on my last video that I was gonna get to this, so I wanted to go a little bit more. I briefly touched on it in one of my last videos, but I wanna talk about the serpent. And so what we know is that the left hemisphere is execution, the right hemisphere is self-awareness. And so the left hemisphere is Adam and the right is Eve. And so what we know is that the right hemisphere has greater interconnection with the body, greater somatic connection, greater interoception. So when a person is in disintegration, they have a hard time feeling things because they're in disintegration. Why? Because of shame. Because there's a suppressed trauma, a lot of other elements that cause someone to suppress emotions, there is disintegration, disconnection. This is why God says, hey, by the sweat of your brow, your corpus callosum, will you receive bread or insight from your right hemisphere. And Eve would want to be reintegrated with the left hand, the right hand and the left hand. She wants reintegration. But because the pain is so intense and the childbearing on this side is so great, Adam would suppress or rule over her. He would cause her to be all those emotions, everything that is happening in the body to be suppressed because it's too painful. And this is what happens with people who have shame. They go into isolation, they can't feel things, or if there's suppressed trauma, again, they cannot feel. So this is what God is telling Adam when he had eaten the fruit, what the body was producing. And so now let's go ahead and talk about what's happening with the serpent. So we talked about earlier how your eyes close when the body is producing something, or the brain is predicting based upon what the body is producing, that you need to draw your attention here because there's a threat. There's something very enticing, something pleasurable, something that would give you great reward. And so it draws your attention and your eyes close. That's called thalamic gain. And then it causes you to come to the tree, what the body's producing. So Eve is moving closer to the tree. And those metabolic regulators, what you know as serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, these neurotransmitters, cause you to apply effort. They focus you, they help focus you and push you. So then you go, so in this instance, let's just give you an example. Serotonin is a mood stabilizer. So if serotonin drops, dopamine is allowed to increase, or dopamine increases because there's potential reward. So it causes you to pursue further. Now, if you notice what Eve says, Eve comes to the tree and says, well, it was good for wisdom. And the Bible says there's two types of wisdom. Wisdom from above, and then there's wisdom that's more sensual, right? So not thinking clearly, not thinking, filtering everything through love, right? Taking every thought captive, not filtering, is this the right thing to do? Filtering everything through love, instead acting on desires, acting on sensuality, what is coming to the body instead of having control. Now, Dr. Dan Siegel likes to use the hand model where he just basically says, he says that everything coming from the body, it's like, you ever heard flip your lid? So this cortex rules over the amygdala, or everything that is emotional reacting coming up to the body. So if you flip your lid, everything from the body takes control. But you gotta not flip your lid. Keep your hands over and keep your lid down. But, so what I'm getting at is the body is producing something. a fruit, and Eve, the right hemisphere, goes and takes from it and then gives it to her husband. Now, the thing about the serpent is its driving effort, driving focus. And so the thing that the serpent is saying is to be like God. So if you're going to be like God and you take control with no rules, you're going to do whatever you want to do. That's a very prideful person. So in the Bible, it says that pride comes before destruction and arrogance before a fall. So that means like the fall of relationship, out of relationship with God. So when you become arrogant, you begin to go against what is correct, what is right. You begin to do the things that you know are not right. So arrogance is the first step towards a fall. And pride ultimately creates disconnection. A prideful person cannot hear the voice of God. They become completely disconnected. This is what this story is telling you. But the right hemisphere in this story is taking from what the body is producing, decides to ignore what God is saying, and gives it to her husband. And this causes all of the cascade of emotions, of bodily health, mental health, right? All of these things I expressed in the first tree conversation. So disintegration is essentially what happens. Now, people are a product of what's been done to them, what's been done for them, and what they've done themselves. So, people have made mistakes. People have had things done to them, and they've done things wrong as well. So when you see somebody who is hurting or in a difficult circumstance, going through challenges, it may not be them who ultimately cause these traumas, these suppressed shame, and all this guilt, and all these things that are suppressed, that are causing stress and making them sick. That isn't always the case. It isn't always the person who creates the act or does the act. It could be things that are done to them, because as Jesus says, out of the mouth the heart speaks, and life and death come from out of the mouth, off the tongue. So you can destroy a person's spirit or give it death just by the words you speak. You can create sickness in another person. So this is what it means with the serpent. So I did put a few things in here in my book that give you an example. But in my book, I state that the serpent are neurotransmitters. But before I show you this particular diagram, I want to tell you something. So Jesus also explains what serpents are as well. So if you recall, Jesus looks at the Pharisee and he says, "You bunch of serpents, you brood of vipers." Now, if you recall, in the story of Adam and Eve, the serpent attacks the heel. Now, back in those times, the heel was symbolic of weakness and vulnerability. And, all this information was shared. And so the Greeks created something called the Achilles heel. So these things were sort of, transferred around between all of the cities or the metroplexes or the great cities of that time that were full of knowledge and philosophers, like Athens and Alexandria in Egypt and in Jerusalem, like all these bigger cities, all these things, all these different cities held all of the greatest minds. So you could tell that things were being, as travel between each one of these territories, all of this information was being communicated throughout. But if you take a look at the Greeks, they had something called the Achilles heel. The heel is a point of vulnerability. So in the story of Adam and Eve, the serpent attacks the heel. It attacks your weaknesses. So that's why people, when, addictions and things that are driven by neurotransmitters, these molecules like dopamine that drive you to do things that when in dysregulation can get you in real big trouble. Okay? But now Jesus, let's go back to what Jesus calls a serpent. So he calls the Pharisee a serpent. Why? Because they attack the heel. They were trying to attack his weaknesses. They were trying to find any fault in his teaching so that they could build their own reputations on top of him. So any moment of vulnerability and weakness, they were trying to find so that they could attack and suppress him and make themselves look righteous and better. So that's the nature of a serpent, and we walk with serpents. There might be people everywhere around you when you go to work. Man, I hope not, but maybe even in your own home, that are just waiting for you to make a mistake. And when you make a mistake, they pounce on you right away and make you feel little. They want to drive you down, especially sometimes in the workplace when someone notices you make a mistake or you have a vulnerability. They see an opportunity to capitalize on that, elevate themselves, and push you down instead of having a multiplier mindset and multiplying their talents in you and coming to you and say, hey, I have a way. I've had the same experience. I can help you. Let me help you out. Or here's some ideas on how you could be better at this. I noticed this. I used to be that way too. So instead of being supportive, they're waiting for the moment of your weakness and they attack you. So instead of having a multiplier mindset, instead of trying to build people up, they attack the weakness and vulnerabilities. So that's why Jesus called them a viper, a serpent, because serpents attack the vulnerabilities and weaknesses in people. All right. So now Jesus also says something else. He says that I give you power over serpents and scorpions. So what he's saying is that the Spirit, my Spirit in you, remember on my last video, if God is in a man, then God lives in him and he lives in God. And so Jesus says, I give you my peace. I don't give as the world gives, but I give you my peace. And we are called to peace. So what's happening here is he's saying, I give you power to tread on or to have control over serpents and scorpions. Serpents and scorpions are neurotransmitters or dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, all these things that cause a person to drive effort or to apply effort, and hormones. So he says, I give you stability. My Spirit inside of a person causes a person to be patient, at peace. Not all this variability, fluctuations, right? Not all these mood changes, but instead to be at peace. And the things that cause you to apply effort are neurotransmitters, metabolic regulators, right? They're trying to balance body budget because your body is reacting to threats, rewards, all this external stimuli. But then there's also hormones. So as I said, the hormones, when they're out of sync or when they're in dysregulation, it causes all kinds of things in the body that can make a person unhealthy. So this is why God is our protector, our healer. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen, now I'll talk about the neurotransmitters and hormones. So if you could see this, it's kind of quite interesting. But if you see this, here are your neurotransmitters, right? They're molecules and they look like little snakes, right? And then you have your hormones. So you have cortisol, right? It causes stress. And then you have testosterone and progesterone. You have all these hormones. And they look like little scorpions because they're just because of the nature of the way the molecule is set, the structure of the molecules. So you could see the 4 rings and the single rings, and you could see how what Jesus is telling them is that I give you my peace, and the Spirit inside of you will stabilize all of these things that are causing dysfunction in you, that are causing you to be sick. So there's that. And one interesting detail that I just thought about right now is that, if you recall the Egyptians in their headdress, right? They had these little serpents that are right over here in the front of their headdress. So it's really interesting. The Egyptians had a ton of knowledge. They knew everything that was going on when it came to the body. As you could tell, Moses was educated in all of this. But it's just really interesting how the serpent was also in their headdress right above their head right here. And then the headdress comes down kind of like a serpent itself, right? So we know that the Egyptians were very well versed in everything in the body. Now, I'm just calling you guys to consider some of these things as you move forward in your life, and as you go into your workplace, as you go to your homes. Man, are we a serpent? Are you a serpent? Right? Are you just looking for people's weaknesses and vulnerabilities, just waiting to strike, not listening to them, but actually not being present, but just waiting for the moment where you can jump in and take advantage of a person's vulnerabilities, their weaknesses, or their lack of knowledge in an area, instead of having a multiplier mindset, truly being a leader that says, I want to help you be more like me. I used to be like you, and I want to help you be better. How can I help you? I'm a teammate. I'm a team member. Let's be like a team. Let's work as one. How can I be supportive? If you don't have that mindset, but instead you are snapping at the heel of people around you, I just want to encourage you. Flip your mindset. Instead of focusing on me, focus on muy. That's what Dr. Dan Siegel always says. So try to be a team player and build the skill set in other people, and have a multiplier mindset. So you're not a serpent, but instead you're somebody who builds people up. So anyhow, I hope that helped everyone out. And more to come as things come up. Feel free to send me any messages or anything that you might want to hear further. But I'll continue to build and put the story together for you and bring some more insights and information. So appreciate your time. Appreciate everyone watching this video. The book is going to be released soon. Hang in there. But I hope you're all excited. All right. Thank you so much. Till next time.